If you look at the statistics, roughly 15% of people in the West will experience at least one episode of clinical depression in their lifetime. At its worst, the condition manifests as a near complete paralysis of the mind and body. Patients become entirely passive, staying in bed for days with their cognitive functions, memory, thinking, and concentration slowing to a crawl. But from an evolutionary standpoint, this presents a bizarre paradox. In nature, a creature that stops moving, stops eating, and becomes indifferent to its surroundings is usually a creature that gets eaten. If falling into a deep depression is such a deadly disadvantage, why didn't human evolution weed this trait out thousands of years ago? To understand this, we have to look at how the brain categorizes our moods. It operates on a spectrum between active and passive. On the active side, you find joy and enthusiasm, but also frustration and anxiety. On the passive extreme sits sadness and depression. When the brain pulls that emergency brake, it forces the body into a low activity state. It suggests that severe depression might not be a mechanical failure, but a biological retreat designed to keep the body alive. We see the strongest evidence for this in seasonal affective disorder. In high-latitude countries like Sweden, where light is scarce for months, the rates of this specific depressive state are exceptionally high. Mammals like bears and squirrels use a similar seasonal form of deep depression to survive the winter. We call it hibernation. By slowing their metabolism and internal organs, they survive for months without the nutrition that would normally be essential. For our early ancestors, apathetic, depressed behavior during a harsh winter served the same purpose. By moving less and using fewer muscles, they burned less energy and could make do with the minimal food and drink available until spring. Even though modern life has changed, that hardwired energy-saving code remains. When the light fades in winter, the brain attempts to reproduce that connection between a lower mood and biological survival. Seasonal affective disorder is an ancient biological survival tool, now misfiring in a world where food and warmth are no longer seasonal luxuries. This evolutionary logic also applies to our social survival, specifically within the tribal structures that characterized human life for thousands of years. If an ancient mother's brain concluded she lacked the physical or mental strength to care for herself and her newborn, it would induce a depressive state. This wasn't a failure, but a signal of total exhaustion. When the rest of the tribe recognized this paralysis, they would take it upon themselves to care for the baby. By forcing the mother to rest, the brain used depression to guarantee the survival of both mother and child. We see this same pattern in modern postpartum depression, often triggered by a mother's fear of returning to work or the overwhelming stress of modern isolation. The supportive tribal village may be gone, but the biological alarm system designed to summon them remains perfectly intact. This shift from environmental to social triggers explains why clinical depression rates have skyrocketed since the 1990s. Researchers believe the cause is the relentless pressure of living in an intensely materialistic society. The brain uses depression as a subterfuge, a way to force a temporary escape from a modern struggle for survival that it perceives as unwinnable. It sinks into inactivity to prompt those nearby to provide help. However, there is a critical, dangerous flaw in this survival mechanism, a mismatch of energy and mood that makes it life-threatening. As a person begins to recover, their physical energy levels return much faster than their outlook improves. This chart shows the gap that opens up as the body regains its strength while the mood remains at its lowest point. This gap is the danger zone. In the depths of depression, a sufferer lacks the energy to act on suicidal thoughts. But as they begin to improve, they suddenly have the physical energy to carry them out. While the brain's original intent was to save the body by shutting it down, this mismatch of energy makes clinical depression a condition that requires constant professional supervision. To understand how to manage this, it helps to view depression like a physical fever. A fever is a strategic slowdown, the body's way of fighting off an infection. The brain intends for depression to be a temporary phenomenon that passes once the environmental storm has moved on and equilibrium is restored. Just because a fever is a defense doesn't mean we let it burn unchecked. Because it is life-threatening, professional intervention is critical. Modern treatments shorten suffering and bridge that energy gap, mitigating risk while the brain finds balance. A depressed brain is not a broken brain. It is a brain trying, however desperately, to help its owner survive. Recognizing depression as a protective shield removes the shame of a malfunction. It turns the condition into a clear signal that something in our environment, our modern tribe, must change.